Hello, welcome to Profiles. I'm your host, Ed Hyland, and today we're going to take a look at education in Central Florida. Our guest is Dr. David Harrison, Vice Provost for Regional Campuses at the University of Central Florida. Dr. Harrison is Chief Administrative Officer of a regional campus system encompassing 12 sites in 11 counties. As such, he works closely with academic colleges to provide upper division undergraduate and graduate programs in partnership with 6 community colleges in Central Florida. His experience is also firsthand joining UCF from Seminole Community College. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Ed.
Let's talk a little bit more about the reach, if you will. Talk about the campuses, who's involved, and how does it all integrate together?
Well, we are an important partner, an important asset with regard to UCF's regional outreach. As you mentioned, we cover 11 counties throughout Central Florida and do that almost exclusively with 6 partner community colleges. We have offerings as far north as Ocala, as far south as Palm Bay, and we have full service campuses in Cocoa, in Daytona, in Palm Bay, and in Claremont. We work closely with, again, the community colleges to share space in those locations where we don't have full service campuses, and in some cases we're trying to work to expand capacity to get campuses at places like Seminole Community College in Lake Mary and Valencia's Metro West campus.
Now, at one time, and this is kind of a personal experience, at one time when I was in my younger days preparing for college, community college was considered kind of a second tier. It was something that you tried to get into the big college or the university, and then, well, for whatever reason, either finances or academically, then you had to go to community college. And that's really changed now. The whole attitude and the whole curriculum almost has changed as people get involved with school.
Well, at some level, I think that's always been a misconception. I mean, community colleges nationally play a vital role in higher education. A lot of people don't realize that there are as many undergraduates enrolled at community colleges throughout the nation as there are at universities. And in fact, they do a better job, at least from a numbers standpoint, of serving our underrepresented minority groups. So again, community colleges have always been vital in that regard. Florida's community college system is arguably as good as any in the country. And I think what's happened in recent years, especially in the state of Florida, has been an emphasis by the state on keeping its best students in the state. And that has been triggered largely through the Bright Futures merit-based scholarship program. And what's happened there is as more and more Florida students, high-performing Florida high school students, have chosen to stay in the state, and typically in the state university system at places like UCF, then very high-performing students who may have gone to UCF in the past as first-time in college freshmen are starting at a community college. So over the last 5 or 6 years, as you say, you have seen a trend, especially in Florida, for more traditional college freshmen opting to go for their first 2 years at the community college. One of the real advantages that the state of Florida has is in the 2+2 program, which allows students to complete their associate's degree at any community college and articulate to any of the state universities as a college junior. I've been in Florida for about 5 years, and I can tell you that that 2+2 model is a unique national competitive advantage. A lot of other states would like to have that in place. A lot of them are trying to get there. It'll take them years, if not decades. So our ability to work collaboratively and in strong partnership with our community college really serves the state students well.
I think I mentioned, personal experience. My daughter is one who is able academically to come to a UCF and has chosen to go to Seminole Community College because she wanted to essentially stay with a little more intimate atmosphere, and a lot of her friends are going there too.
Well, again, it's a great part of the state of Florida's higher education system that students have those kinds of options. As you point out in the case of your daughter, it's not necessarily, in fact, it's not at all, a case of ability. It's learning style, it's where she's comfortable, where students think they're going to be the most successful to start out. And as we all know, You have different needs when you're 18 than you do even when you're 19, 20, and 21. It really changes every year and even every semester. Again, the kind of transparency in the relationship that we're trying to develop serves those students very well.
You know my daughter with her changing needs every semester, it seems. One of the things that it's got to be a challenge is adapting the curriculum so that the student in community college is indeed ready to make that transition and is right on par with everyone else who's been in the university system, if you will, even though they're both part of the same curriculum. How do you work on that? How do you get the two programs to mesh together?
Well, it is a challenge, and it's easier in some disciplines than it is in others. I've only been in this role since August, and prior to that I've been with community colleges, and I think one of the strengths that I bring to this role is the ability to translate and really help folks understand what students are going through as they make the transition from what's in effect their sophomore year to their junior year, and really try to focus even prior to coming to UCF some of the curricular requirements that they may have so that they can truly transition seamlessly. A specific answer to your question is really trying to promote more ongoing communication faculty to faculty from UCF with the community colleges, and really trying to develop programs that are uniquely designed for transfer students, especially at regional campuses. Our students are typically older, more part-time. They are working in many cases full-time with family responsibilities. They're financially independent. A lot of the kinds of things they're looking for are programs that are going to advance their careers, and perhaps advance their career with the same employer that they would stay with. So our ability to not only work with the university and the community college, but also employers, and making sure that as a stakeholder in this process, their voice is heard, is something that we're really trying to build in more and more. And that way, faculty from UCF and the community colleges are hearing those needs of the community.
I was going to ask, are you starting to see more of a business participation in this? I mean, usually employers are very hopeful that their employees will get out and learn some additional educational skills that they can utilize on the job. But are you starting to see some more of the large corporations and the small corporations getting together and saying, hey, this is an important thing?
Well, throughout my career, frankly, I've seen that, where businesses absolutely see their employees as their most valuable asset, and any time that they can spend in that conversation to really help make sure that the needs of the emerging workplace are built into the classroom, they're eager to do that. Sometimes it's difficult because we don't always ask the right question, or we don't get them involved early enough. So what we're doing in a couple of projects we're working on now, again, is really get them involved very early on in the process, but not necessarily with a clean sheet of paper, really helping them to the same language barrier that may exist between the university and the community college exists probably by a factor of 10 between higher ed and business. And a big part of my role and my team's role, frankly, is again in that translator, that facilitator role, so that we can ensure that communication is built in from the very beginning.
Does this seem to have a mutually beneficial effect? I mean, the community colleges have been strong in Florida and are contributing to the education process with the students they move through the system and up into UCF. But has it also worked kind of the other way in that perhaps through the partnerships, through the alliances, and through the increased knowledge about the program, the schools themselves have perhaps spent more money, invested more in their base to help these students achieve even greater heights academically?
The community college?
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. And again, as I said, in recent years, as more and more community college students have arrived at the community college campus with their primary goal to transfer to the university, there's much less difference, perhaps, than there had been before in terms of the experience that student has. The student body, if you will, especially during the day at community colleges, looks much more like the student body as freshmen and sophomores at the university than they did probably 10 years ago.
it's been a while since I was schooling, and I'm just kind of curious if they are students within the community college system coming out to UCF and taking courses, for example. Is it working at that point yet, or is that jumping the gun a bit?
Well, there actually had been more of that. You're talking about essentially being co-enrolled?
Essentially, but also, let's say something that wasn't offered on the community college level, but you're working, a particular unique type of class, for example, it perhaps involves some expensive equipment that was only available at the university.
That certainly is a possibility. The general model, and I think one that's important for both the university and the community college, is to really work with students to ensure that they complete their associate's degree before coming to the university. In the state's 2+2 program, that really works to everyone's advantage in that regard, and we try to, and are trying even harder now, I think, to work with community colleges and with faculty and advisors and those kinds of things, make sure our folks are providing appropriate communication often, so that there is a minimal amount of rework in the process, if you will. I think there are some mechanisms if necessary, for a student to do something along the lines of what you're talking about. But what we'd prefer to do is work with the community college, and if it is a recurring need, make sure they understand that. And my experience is they are very eager to address those kinds of needs to help students. We are, if I could just go into a quick example, sure. We're working with Brevard Community College right now in engineering. It's important to note, I think, that community college transfers do very well when they transfer to the university. One of the areas that's a little more difficult are in areas like engineering, because there are some more specialty courses in the freshman and sophomore level, as opposed to some other programs where they can complete their AA and come in as a college junior. In engineering, it's not quite that simple. So we're working now with Brevard Community College to help them deliver those lower division, those sophomore level courses, so that students within their Associate of Arts degree from BCC can transfer to UCF as a college junior in electrical engineering or mechanical engineering. My first degree is in engineering, so it's something that I've got a real interest in, but I think it's important, certainly from a regional economic development standpoint and from a student perspective, because students who have a clear goal in mind, we've got to do everything we can to get out of their way and make sure we can help them do that, and I think this is an important way to do that. So it's just been a real, the early results are really good in terms of the conversations that have happened with the faculty between the College of Engineering at UCF and Brevard Community College.
When you say working with, are we talking at this point of curriculum development, or perhaps even loaning of professors?
Well,
I'm not sure if
all the above, really getting down at the syllabus level and saying, okay, this is a course number that you have, this is a course number that we have, do they really mean the same thing? So that when a student goes through that course, are they really going to be prepared for the next course that would lead into? But we are also discussing a lot of possibilities around joint faculty appointments and promoting more of those kinds of interactions. We have an arrangement in place now with Lake Sumter Community College at the South Lake campus in Claremont, where our sports and fitness program is, where we have a joint faculty appointment in sports and fitness. So they will be teaching both sophomore level, actually even freshman and sophomore level courses, and junior and senior level courses in our sports and fitness program. And they are, again, a joint hire between Lake Sumter and UCF, and it's a model that we're very proud of, and it's one we want to replicate in a lot of other areas.
Is it one of the few in the state that utilizes this type of arrangement?
Well, I think it is, but it's hard to look at those things objectively and know for sure. UCF's regional campus model is unique among the state. I mean, there are others that are doing things similarly, but the scope in terms of the number of community colleges we're working with, the geographic area that we're working with, and I think the programmatic partnerships that we're now starting to do is unique. And it's really through those programmatic partnerships where things like joint faculty appointments and joint advising appointments and those kinds of things really start to make sense.
Everybody these days, from homeowners to education facilities, everyone's watching their dollars these days. It's a tough world out there. Is this a way that is not only helping to develop students, but also a way to better utilize education dollars, in that you're perhaps you're sharing some resources, you're helping each other, so to speak, and not having to pull in outside advisors or anything along those lines? It's just a way to make the process a little more streamlined.
I don't think there's any question about it. I think the model that we have in place with the regional campus system and again the state's articulation model in 2+2 is I think a national model in terms of providing high quality, affordable access to higher education, affordable both to the student and to the taxpayer, because as you say, we're not having to replicate resources. We're working collaboratively with a number of partners to not only operate facilities but fund the building of facilities. I mentioned 2 new facilities we're working on with Seminole Community College and Valencia Community College. We're working with them to get legislative support for those kinds of facilities. And when you look at it regionally, it only makes sense. It only makes sense to look at it that way. I mean, that's the way our students live their lives. So for us to be able to partner deeply within our organizations absolutely provides the opportunity to decrease redundancy when you look at the kinds of services that students need, and maximize the use of the physical assets that the state provides.
With this model in place and apparently working pretty well at this juncture, where would you like to see it go? How do you expand it? Do you expand it? I mean, do you start to look at other community colleges outside of Central Florida, or is this the core? You pretty much have to stay within the realm of Central Florida.
Our focus right now is deepening the partnerships we have with the 6 community colleges that we're working with, and if I could just name them, it's Central Florida Community College, Lake Sumter Community College, I mentioned Seminole Community College in Valencia, Brevard Community College, and Daytona Beach Community College. Those 6 colleges really span the 11 counties that we're working with, and growth is an important objective for us, because growth implies access. The more we grow, the more students are getting access to higher education, and these are students that in all likelihood wouldn't have an option of attending UCF. They are place-bound for a variety of reasons. 2 of the most important factors in regional economic development are education and transportation, and a lot of people don't realize how closely those 2 are interrelated, because for students who are working 40 or more hours a week, to drive to Orlando 2 nights a week for class, for many of them, most of our students, it's really just not an option. So our ability to provide meaningful programs at our regional campus locations that are aligned with the needs of our students and with the communities that we're serving, that align with the strengths of our community college partners, because each of those 6 community college partners have their own programs of distinction, and our ability to really tap into those and give those students an opportunity for bachelor's degree experiences is important. So to answer your question, we absolutely see the need to grow. The state of Florida is one of the very few in the country that has a steady upward trend of projected high school graduates for the next 15 years. That means something to all of us in all levels of education. And as UCF takes its role, its mission for regional higher education very seriously, the ability to grow in Orlando is going to be somewhat limited, not only by capacity, but again, as I said before, by the ability of students to get there. So our ability to reach out to adult learners in each of the communities is going to continue to be an important part of what the university does.
I was going to ask, how much more can we grow? I mean, as you mentioned, there are some obstacles really to, I mean, growth is something that we've come to become accustomed to here, but you know, the campus, UCF main campus has its own limitations, even though it's a far-flung facility with some space to build. Each of the campuses are also in the process of growing, they're building. How much can we handle, because people not only are here and producing families here, but also it's a great place to live, so more
Right.
people are moving here.
Well, I don't know the answer to your question in terms of how much more we can grow.
How much more can we handle in the way of students, I guess I
Well,
should phrase?
The state legislature has been very supportive of the work that we're doing, and I think shown a lot of foresight, not just in building physical capacity, but in the operation of these kinds of facilities by providing dollars that are targeted to grow these kinds of regional programs. So we've got a strong financial foundation that does provide the opportunity to grow. I think, to your point earlier, our ability to partner with our community colleges, who are also growing and growing rapidly, makes it easier for us to work together to manage that growth, as opposed to any one of us as a single entity trying to respond to it. There are always limitations, but there are always opportunities too. As we continue to get communities engaged in this and make this a true team effort, our ability to match the needs with regard to growth that our communities have, I feel pretty confident in.
Is expanding technology going to play a role in this, the telecommunications type classes and this sort of thing?
Sure. That has an important role.
Telecommuting, I should say.
Yeah, that has an important role, not just for regional campuses, but for all of UCF and frankly for all of higher education. You look at any of the higher ed partners in the state of Florida, and there's probably been a steady upward trend in students enrolling in web-based courses and those kinds of things. And that, as I said, plays an important role. It plays an exclusive role for a very small number of students. And the way students typically use those kinds of technologies is, instead of coming to campus for 2 classes during a semester, they'll come to campus for 1 and take another as a web-based course. We think that's important because we want them to have access to the courses, but what we really want them to do is learn. And what we really want to do is be successful in those courses, and their engagement on campus with real people is an important factor in their ability to do that, even if they are taking a web course to supplement that. We're doing more and more combination, what we call mixed mode or mixed media courses, where some of the class is on the web and there are fewer class meetings, and that's working well. So the answer is yes, technology does play an important role, but not an exclusive role in our growth.
Can you give us an idea of who now would be your average community college student, and how that person may or may not eventually end up in the UCF system?
Well, I mean, we joke about that all the time. There really isn't, and we talk about terms like non-traditional student. But if all of your students are non-traditional, does that make them non-traditional?
You set your new tradition.
Yeah, in general, there are students who fall perhaps into a couple of categories. And the way we've started to ask the question are students who see themselves as students first who work part-time, or students first who work, or employees first who go to school. Because what we found over the last few years is even students who are full-time students are working 30 or more hours. So it's not just a minimum wage job for pocket change, the way it was perhaps when we were in college. But then you also have the working adult who's financially independent, perhaps has a family of their own, who's coming back for a class or 2 while they're working, again, 40 or more hours at 1 or more jobs. Our students work hard. They want it bad. So if I was going to break it down again into a couple of categories, there are the full-time students, many of whom have as a primary objective to transfer on to UCF or to some other bachelor's degree program. But there's also, again, this adult learner who is working perhaps full-time, who may take 4 or more years to complete their associate's degree, who may not have realized until later in life that they even had the confidence or the wherewithal to achieve a bachelor's degree. We're going to be there for those students too.
And in a way, that's kind of helped broaden the student that is eventually going to be coming into UCF. People who, because they had, I'll say limitations, they're not limitations, there are other things going on in their life, you know, whether it's jobs or family. And then they get into the community college system and they start to recognize there's a value here. I'm learning things, I'm able to apply this to my job or my family life, and hopefully one day I'll be able to go into UCF and maybe get that degree, which will give me another life altogether.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the most rewarding experiences in a job like mine is to work with a student and see a student grow who perhaps was in a difficult situation when they were in high school, maybe didn't have the options that many of us had when we graduated from high school, perhaps joined the military or found themselves in a difficult financial situation early on, come into higher education later in life, struggle to get their associate's degree, but somewhere along the line realize, hey, I can do this. You know, I can do this. And in a lot of cases, it's because they've been in a learning situation, perhaps for the first time, where what's being taught means something to them, either because a faculty member has reached out to them or there's an experience in their life that they've been able to make a connection to. And once the light goes on, you can't put it out. So that student then gains confidence and their grades start to go up, and then, you know, somewhere along the line they say, I don't want to stop when I finish my associate's degree. And that's why UCF's priority for reaching out to transfer students is important, certainly on a regional level, but it's important to that student too. And that student is the kind of student that regional campuses, again, is going to be there for.
And on that very positive note, I think I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us, and I think we've all learned a little something about the 2+2 program and, you know, this great partnership that's going on between UCF and the community colleges in our area. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Ed, for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Profiles. I'm Ed Hyland. We'll see you next time.